Diminishing effectiveness in pursuit of efficiency. We rush through the day at 100 miles an hour with a long to-do list, and we're very, very much focused on how much we do rather than how effective we are in our day. So I'm just going to take you through some thoughts around how to focus more on effectiveness than efficiency. So the first one is autopilot. We spend an enormous amount of our day on autopilot. As humans, our brains prefer that. If you read Daniel Kahneman's Thinking Fast and Slow, in there's a numerous amount of experiments that demonstrate how our brains prefer being on this sort of system one thinking that's autopilot because it takes less energy. So it can be really, really efficient, but it can also really diminish your effectiveness because you get in old patterns of behaviour. You rush off and do things without even thinking about it. You may not prioritise well enough. You may really not focus on, actually, why am I doing this? I always do this. I think it has to be done, but does it have to be done? It's that questioning. If we're on autopilot, we just sort of go through the day on automatic. So I picked this image here, 1930s car factory, because it really demonstrates sort of that autopilot nature of the world we live in as human beings. And we think these are structures of the past, these factories with all this machinery that we're sort of stand in line and do our jobs. But I don't think so. I think still within the digital age, we are still in sort of structures. They don't look like this anymore, but we can still be slaves to that email going, the notifications. So we're still in this sort of, can be slaves to this autopilot. So it's really important to know when you're on autopilot and to stop and to question, is this the right way for me to be effective? Am I being really effective? So to get off autopilot is to adopt a curious mindset. And curiosity is your best friend in effectiveness. Because if you question enough, whatever you start to do, when you start to do the doing, you'll really understand it, what you need to do, should be the focus of what you're doing and the purpose of what you're doing much more clearly. And that's the same with if you're working with other people in relationships, if you're managing people, or you are being managed. It's asking questions when people ask you to do something and not rushing off and just doing it because you think you know what they mean. And also challenging with that questioning. Do you really need me to do this? What's it feeding into? How could I do it better? Do I need to do it like this? So having that really curious mindset. It's the same when you're dealing with clients and customers. We can think people are just being awkward or they're difficult, but they may not be. And actually, if we stop and ask questions, okay, I sense that this isn't landing right with you. I sense that it's not working for you. Can we just explore this a bit? Asking questions. We are far too quick to solutions. I've been in numerous groups leading on creativity and innovation, and people want to dive into solutions very, very quickly. We want solutions, and we don't spend enough time in this curious phase. So curiosity is your friend. And here I've chosen a vanitas painting from the Dutch 17th century. And this was all about curiosity about the afterlife. So these paintings are loaded with meaning. You'll see the time clock there, the sand timer, a skull, a pen that's not being used, a musical instrument with no strings, and playing cards. All these were symbols of human presence and things that people coveted that they would leave behind and wouldn't need for the next world. So I thought that was a lovely image for curiosity. So the third thing I want to talk about is fears, being driven by fears. If you're acting on a fear, then you may not be as effective as you'd like to be. So we all have shadow behaviour. If you read Carl Jung on shadow behaviour, then we all have shadow behaviour. Shadow behaviour is our sensitivities and fears. And they're the things about ourselves we don't actually like and we can project onto other people. But if we look at the sensitivities and fears, so an example of a shadow behaviour may be, a sensitivity, that you don't want to be manipulated. You've got a fear of being manipulated or sensitivity to manipulation. So you've learnt, because you don't want to be manipulated, to make really strong decisions, very resolute. Because if you make a strong decision, no one can push you around. You've made a decision and you've been clear. Now that's going to work really well for you until you're under enormous pressure. And then under pressure, your decisions will be far too resolute, far too severe, and they will lose their nuances. So I say to people that I work with, and when I'm looking at shadow behaviour with them, I use a tool that identifies their shadow behaviour. If you feel a knot in your stomach or a gut that you really compelled to do something, I really must make a strong decision. It's essential I make a strong decision. If it comes from the gut, it's probably a compulsion, it's probably a fear. And it's at that time you just need to step back and go, okay, what's the fear here? What am I nervous around? What could happen? What might happen? And how do I keep my nuances and a bit of perspective on what's happening now? So be aware of your shadow and your fears, so your fears and your sensitivities, and are they driving your behaviour? And this image is of denial of Peter, and here Peter's denying Christ, and so very, very much being driven by his fear. So the last image I've got is of this beautiful still life by Adrian Court. He painted this when still lifes were in the 1600s, when they were super opulent. So he was quite unusual that he really just focused on one simple, beautiful, everyday object. And so the last thing for it to be is mindful. Mindful of what's going on for you. Am I on autopilot? Is it helping me? Is it the right way to do things? Have I been curious enough? Do I really understand this person? Do I really understand myself? Is it a fear that's driving me? Do I feel the need to make a decision? Do I feel the need to make this work perfect? Perfection is another sensitivity. And it's just that stopping, breathing, and giving yourself a few seconds to go to check in and think, is this the right way forward? And that will really help you be much more effective. And pursue effectiveness, or focus on your effectiveness, which will of course bring efficiency, but not just for efficiency's sake. So all the images I've used have been taken from the Rijksmuseum collection. It's online and it's a beautiful collection, so do go and have a look at their website. My name's Tracy McEachran from Curious Minds Consulting. So I wish you highly effective lives. Thank you.